Get up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Cast of Kings, an unofficial podcast about the HBO original series A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. I'm David Chen, and I've never read George R.R. Martin's A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms.
I'm Kim Renfro, and I have read George R. Martin's A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms.
Welcome back to the show, Kim.
Thank you.
People were missing you last week. Jesse, of course, did a wonderful job filling in for you. People are wondering what happened with Kim. Is Kim okay? Kim, are you okay? What's going on?
I am okay. Life threw me a couple of curveballs, including a case of RSV that me and my toddler had at the same time. So, you're hearing the remnants of that now, perhaps. But major shout out to Jesse, my girl, stepping in. I had a lot of fun getting to kind of sit and listen to you two react to the episode. So I'm glad to be back. And also thank you so much to Jesse and you for very gallantly and thoroughly covering the phenomenal episode that was last week in my absence.
It was a great episode. And perhaps eclipsed by this week's episode.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be talking about that momentarily. But yes, Kim wasn't feeling well last week, nor was her child. They're slightly better this week. Hopefully they'll be completely recovered by the season finale of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Thanks for all the kind words. You can always email us at acastofkings@gmail.com. Today on the podcast, what we're going to be doing is discussing what we thought about season 1, episode 5 of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. In the Name of the Mother is the name of the episode. Then we got some emails to discuss at acastofkings@gmail.com. And then we got a Reddit AMA that Ira Parker, the showrunner of Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, recently did. We'll be discussing some of his responses from that AMA. So that is what we got in store for you today here on A Cast of Kings. Kim Renfro, let's talk about A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, season 1, episode 5, In the Name of the Mother. What were your overall thoughts on the episode?
Man, I was in awe by the closing of this episode. As you say, last week was incredible. This I wasn't quite sure how they could possibly top it, aside from knowing, a bit of the tragedy that was impending. And I just can't believe how they brought together the flashbacks that they've been using in such a distinct way, adding more things, which we'll talk about, more things that were surprising to me as a book reader, while also sticking really true to the sort of like series of gut punches that you get as this trial unfolds. And just phenomenal storytelling that comes straight from Martin's pages, but blended with, I think, a very adept team that Ira Parker has put together here that just made like the magic of that moment come together in a way that's very, very Thronesy, very Westeros. I feel like this episode was one of those that had everything that one could want, and so dense. Like, I'm sitting here being like, I could talk about this episode for probably like 4 hours if we really spent enough time to get into the weeds of all of these minor things that they did. And I love an episode of TV that you can really chew on like that. So A+ for me.
I got to say the same. I mean, last week's episode of the show, by the way, received on IMDb 9.7 out of 10, placing it in one of the top 3 highest scoring episodes of any Game of Thrones property. And as we're recording this, we don't know what the IMDb score of this episode is going to be, but I have to imagine it's going to be even higher. I thought this episode was incredible. Filmmaking of the highest order,
Mm-hmm.
I thought. You could place this up next to any kind of any film or property or TV show that has medieval combat of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would definitely hold its own. I mean, we because of the flashback, we don't see as much of it. It doesn't occupy as much of the episode as one might think, but what is there is incredibly impactful and well done, and really gives you a visceral sense of what it might have been like to participate in one of these matches. And obviously, multiple emotional gut punches, particularly with the flashback. I'm like watching these, young versions of these characters who I've never really met before in the show, and like weeping because of
Mm.
how well executed this sequence was.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the finale, the very end of the episode ends with a shock, right? Very surprising development. And so, just probably one of my favorite Game of Thrones things that has ever been made, which
Mm.
I did not think I would be saying about this show when it
Yeah.
began. I mean, like, I've talked a lot about this in past episodes, but like, not only is it, I have said in previous episodes, like, it is this show, Night of the Seven Kingdoms, is more consistent than other shows, but like the highs have not been as high, but the lows are definitely way higher than the previous lows.
Mm-hmm.
I might need to revise that statement and say that like the highs are up there with the best of Game of Thrones that has ever been.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah.
It was just a phenomenal experience, and I'm so grateful that we have a chance to talk about it here on Cast of Kings. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what actually happened in this episode. So, starting right where last week's barn burner of an episode ended, the trial of the seven is about to begin. Baelor gives Dunk's men a rousing speech, and dread mounts in the foggy arena. Dunk and Egg also share a final quote unquote moment as Dunk heads off to battle. And then we see a young Septon bless the event. The two sides clash and battle commences. So, Kim, anything you want to highlight about these kind of pre-battle moments?
Wow. Yes. I think, again, the show carried that mounting tension from last week's episode very well in here. I shout out the fog because that is part of the setting that George R. R. Martin describes in the book. This could have been a bright sunny day at the tourney, but instead I think like this is one of the times that the author's choice of kind of setting this gloom, the difficulty to see, like I think that
you do get a sense that someone is going to die today,
yes,
right? Like one or more people will die today.
Yes.
So like that definitely comes through in the atmosphere.
Totally. And then they added in all of these little details of dialogue that I thought were so perfect. Duncan Raymond puking and then having Sir Harding Humphrey go like, green fucking boys, like
green fucking boys.
That's not in the book, but was like just so pitch perfect of setting up the realism of what's about to happen. I think, it felt to me like it was Ira Parker calling back a little bit to like Dunk shitting his pants at the thought of even going to this tourney. It's like, yeah, him and Raymond are once again being hit physically with the nerves of what they are about to do, which is risk their life on these tourney grounds.
Well, I like how this show carries through some of the ethos of Game of Thrones, right? In my opinion, Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon are very much deconstructions of medieval mythology, right? Like we have these images of Sir Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and like nobility, regal, right? Like all these adjectives that come to mind, but then you see the reality is much more like the quote unquote reality. I know this takes place in Westeros, but like the quote unquote reality is much darker, much less glamorous, much more upsetting than what we would think. And then you watch they're mounting up, they're going to battle. It's like, yeah, they're so badass. But then actually it's just some boys who are throwing up because they're afraid they're about to die. This show, I think, really captures that part. It's just some kids, they don't even really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they probably are going to die soon and they're not happy about it. And I like that, these opening segments capture the lack of glamour in something like this,
Yes. And I think it does more to prove the sort of mettle of both Raymond and Duncan, because I think that one aspect of being brave or showing courage is doing it scared, like doing it even though you feel like you're gonna, you're shaking and you're sick to your stomach. So I loved that added detail. And then the other thing that they added, the dialogue that the Septon is saying too, that young Septon is saying, is also a show invention, which...
Oh, wow. The invocation, right?
Yes.
I was like, wow, that's beautiful. I wonder if George R. R. Martin might have really cooked with that. He had a different... he has a slightly different invocation in the books. I felt it was much more poetic and pointed in the show. But the Septon is there as the sort of blessing of the event, to say like, okay, and now the Seven, it's up to them to charge, their fighters with who is more worthy here, who has the more just cause, implying that the outcome is determined by the gods. And all throughout, that's in the books you're describing, right? In the books,
yeah. Well, yes, and the young, also the fact that the Septon's like a boy isn't in the books, like that detail of casting someone young, I think was also an interesting detail and choice, because I think it lends to this, like, the connective tissue between Egg and Dunk, and the flashbacks to young Dunk, and this idea that like the youth of Westeros are all either have a place in this society or they don't, and if you don't have a place, find one, kind of like one of the underlying motivations here for Dunk that we're learning about. So I thought that was a detail. That was an added detail that I appreciated. And same with, Lionel Baratheon does not have many lines of dialogue in the book at all. He's mentioned as being here throughout the tourney, but all of these scenes of Dunk, Dunk going to party in his tent, and the rope, the tug of war game, like all of those have been invented for the show. And I think that they're doing just really awesome things with Lionel's character, and having him, this invented line for the show about, mother loved you best, saying that to Baelor before the battle begins, again, was like such a pointed way of bringing in this concept of the faith of the Seven, the idea that, like, the facets of this god, which include the mother and the father, that people within Westeros make very clear analogs between real mothers and fathers, or warriors, if that makes sense. And so the idea...
So just to be clear, Baelor says, I'll take the King's Guard because they cannot harm someone of the royal bloodline, right? And then in response, I think, or reaction to that, Lionel says, "Mother loves you best," or he says, somebody says, "Isn't that dishonorable?" And then he says, "I guess the gods will have to decide."
Yeah.
And then he says, "Mother loves you best," in response.
Yeah, and says something about, he then says, I should have maybe written this full thing down, but he says something like, men without mothers fight the best, or like men who were deprived of the mother's love fight the best.
No man fights so fierce as one neglected by his mother.
Which both ties into like the religious aspects of like, oh, if the mother, the goddess, the mother hasn't blessed you, it means that you might have to be a bit more scrappy. But also this idea that if you are orphaned, like if you in real life have been deprived of the love of a mother, that impacts you, that changes the type of man that you are, that maybe changes your chivalrousness. But again, I think Dunk is an example of someone pushing back against this idea. Dunk is an orphan. He thinks many times to himself in the book that he just like never knew who his mother and father were. And then Egg lied by omission, by letting Dunk assume that he was an orphan, but his mother is dead. He lost his mother.
He did disclose that.
Yeah.
He did disclose that. So
that's true. So there's also this underlying aspect to what's happening here in the dynamics of that Maekar has been like a single dad to 4 sons, and is clearly not...
He's just doing his best.
Right.
He's just trying his best.
He's maybe trying...
He can't help if some of them turn out to be sociopaths,
right. Maybe he's trying his best, but he's clearly not equipped to raise young men to be chivalrous, good men of the realm. He's clearly struggling with that. And we are bearing the consequences of it.
Right.
So once again, just
Aemon, the only really provably good one at this point, probably, right?
Yeah, right. And he's far away
So,
from Maekar,
yeah.
presumably. And same with Egg. It's like Egg seems to have turned out really well. Egg also seems to have the least interaction with his family as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the jury's still out on Egg personally,
Sure.
because he did lie to. He seems very nice and honorable, but he also did lie to get into Dunk's good graces and such.
Yeah.
So anyway, interesting parallels, Kim.
Yeah. Whenever the gods appear in the story, and especially if it's to do with some sort of like ceremony, the way that they're setting up this trial by 7, I think that the question that comes up for a lot of people is like, is any of this real? Like, are in this universe, are these gods real forces that are impacting the world? Are these prophecies that, the fortune teller says, are those true? Are the dreams that Daron has true? In the last episode, we had the whole scene where Daron pulled Dunk aside and told him, like, hey, I had this awful dream about a dragon dying on a meadow, and you were there, and he was dead and you were not. My take on this, and I think, I don't know, I think it holds, it's a fun way to analyze scenes like this, I believe, is that I think that George has constructed this world in a way that like magic is absolutely real, and all of the religions are like different people who have stumbled upon ways in which to channel it, but inconsistently.
Right. No one is like a master of it.
No one's a master of it. No one has it entirely figured out. No one's getting it 100% right. It's all of the religions get cloaked in like propaganda and like self-serving motivations, et cetera, et cetera. And yet I think it's undeniable to say that there's some force acting upon the world, or there's some sort of magical force that exists within the world, and these characters that we're meeting are effectively like bumping up against it in usually tragic ways. So if we like, before we get to like diving into the whole fight thing, I think looking at this as a way of like, was it the gods saying, Dunk is in the right and Arian's in the wrong? Or was it, was it just the happenstance of the handful of good men that happened to be around this tournament when something bad happened and they're trying to right that wrong? And like, that's the fairness of the world. But that question of if the gods meant for Dunk to win is something that's going to like, I think that it weighs on him for the rest of his life, basically. Of like, I didn't mean to get tied up in this whole Faith of the Seven trial by combat thing, but like now it feels like suddenly this is determining the rest of my life type of vibe.
Interesting. All right, so let's talk about what happens in the battle. Dunk takes 2 bad hits from Arion right away. A lance puncturing his side and a morning star to the head. He falls unconscious briefly, and then we move to a flashback sequence. So, like, I mean, first of all, what is amazing about this is how quickly he gets grievously wounded. It's like, not like there's no build up to it, right? It's just, right away he is perhaps mortally wounded. And then we cut to a flashback, and Kim, I just want to tell you, man, I was like, dude, if we don't see the end of the fight today, I'm gonna be pretty upset.
I had that thought too, to be honest. I was like, are they gonna stretch this out over another episode?
Yeah, because they already did that last episode. They're like, hey, the fight's next episode. So okay, I'm willing to wait a week to do that. But then, and I was like, I cannot wait till the next episode.
They're testing your patience.
Conclusion. They were. But then we got like a very impactful finale. But anyway, it's just worth pointing out briefly, like how amazing these fight sequences are, how well done and grounded they are. I think you aptly described in the show notes. Basically, it's structured like there's a kind of jousting or like, people running at each other's or horseback riding each other towards each other with lances.
Yes.
And then after that, it's just a free for all. Like there's
Yes.
no, organization. It's just like, just go at it
Yeah.
kind of thing.
I thought that they might do
And-
like the exposition of that. In the book, Baylor kind of gives everyone a heads up of how it's going to go, which, they're basically doing a 7-to-7 joust with no railings.
Right.
So that once those passes are done, it's just a free-for-all, a melee, as they call it. And everyone has their own weapons. Arian has a morning star, like the big chain with like a spiked ball. They shout out that Maekar has a mace, which is, just like a big staff with a ball at the end. It's kind of a choose your own weapon in addition to the horse and lance type of party. It's insane. And that does happen in the book, that Dunk immediately takes Arian's lance to the side and like is basically fighting for his life from that point on.
It's worth mentioning just how good the filmmaking is. We often get a first-person perspective from Dunk's point of view, looking through that tiny slit in his visor and breathing heavily, and he can barely see anything. And it's like, as I'm watching this, I'm thinking to myself, how did this guy think he was going to survive this? Like, not only one battle, like a freaking tournament. Like the idea that it's just like, it's just inconceivable that he could even do it.
Yeah,
because he can barely live through the first 5 minutes of this thing. So like, how is he going to get through a whole tournament? I have no idea. And you're watching his experience. Like he comes across obviously very physically imposing and with a lot of physical presence, but not particularly experienced or skilled, because he's not.
Right.
And I think the show does a wonderful job of capturing it. So yeah, I'm definitely worried about Dunk in the first few minutes. I know he's going to survive this because I know there's other books, but like definitely. I was surprised playing the card of like the lance goes into his side and he takes a bump to the noggin. I thought the show would like wait a little bit to like parcel that out, because to increase a little tension. But the way they do the tension is with the flashback, and so that's nice,
right?
But yeah, right away they're playing the card of, yep, he's knocked down, he's in terrible shape. Let's cut to the flashback now. In this flashback,
yes,
we see young Dunk searching for scrap metal on a battlefield. His friend and childhood love, Rafe, is there too. We see how he and the other orphans of Flea Bottom survived. And I was not expecting this at all. I do want to give a shout out to the young boy who plays young Dunk.
Yeah.
Bamber Todd is his name, by the way. We do see Bamber Todd in earlier episodes of the show when they flash back to Arland giving young Dunk a bump on the head and slapping him and stuff.
A clout.
That's Bamber. Right, clout. That is Bamber Todd. And it's the same guy, but like it's literally just a few seconds at a time. Like we see him before, and then I do think they did an amazing job casting this kid.
They did.
Like, it's like, wow, I totally buy that is young Dunk, and Peter Claffey is not like an average looking dude. Like he's kind of like very distinct, and this kid looks like very, very similar.
Yeah.
So yeah, we see them like picking gold and other valuables off the battlefield. There's a guy who he kind of almost mercy kills, but then Rafe says no, we should keep him alive, but then they are unable to do that. Seems really painful and upsetting.
Yeah.
But yes, Kim, as I want to hear from you, because this flashback apparently didn't occur in the books at this point in time.
No.
And like, what was your reaction when you saw that they were doing this flashback at this moment?
I immediately kind of let out like a little like, heh. Like it's it's clever because Dunk does take these two blows right away in the fight in the book, and it says that he basically like passes out and comes to. So I was like, oh, they took the opportunity of him getting knocked unconscious to be like, what's going on in that little noggin of yours, Dunk? And turns out it's a really tragic backstory that, is not in the books. Like we've recapped, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is a collection of 3 short stories, and we're in the first one primarily here, called The Hedge Knight. Dunk only thinks back to and like has this little like trip down memory lane to this character, Rafe, in the 3rd novella in the Mystery Night. And even in then, it's certainly not this extended story. Like he doesn't think back about getting scrap metal or trying to save money to get out of King's Landing, doesn't think about Rafe being killed, any of this. In the book, he refers to his three friends being Ferret, Rafe, and Pudding. He says that him and those three friends used to chase the girls around King's Landing, so it's kind of like implied that Ferret, Rafe, and Pudding are boys. But honestly, I was rereading the passage and I was like, George conveniently used like all the other pronoun references here except boys. But it seems to me like the show did make a choice to have Rafe be a girl and then have them have this long extended kind of like, it's just the two of us against the world mentality. They reference Ferret like when they're talking and joking about something, like they mention the other boys. But this idea that like Dunk and Rafe were an especially close pairing and that they loved one another and intended to like leave King's Landing and try to make a better life for themselves, that's entirely show invented, and I think is there to add a little bit more depth and tragedy to Dunk's backstory. It's also interesting. What were you gonna ask?
Well, does the death of Rafe, I should say, happen in the books?
No.
Oh, okay. So then there's no connection necessarily with the death of Rafe and meeting Arland for the first time in the books.
In the books,
oh, interesting.
Yeah, in the books, Dunk only ever repeatedly thinks back to he says a couple of times that Sir Arland found him chasing pigs in Flea Bottom, and like they put these pigs in the scene of the Gold Cloaks confronting Rafe and Dunk in the show. Like there's pigs in the background there. And so I'm like, okay, that's interesting. They're like, the pigs are here, but there's no pig chasing happening. It's clearly this other awful thing going on. And there's no mention of him. He says like Sir Arland saved me from my life in Flea Bottom, but it's not like he saved me from a Gold Cloak who was ready to murder me. So that again is a show invention here. And I think just, it seems to me like the choice there is because it clearly crystallizes more both the type of man that Sir Arland was and the reason why Dunk believes that like becoming a knight and living a life of protecting the innocent is a good and worthy thing to dedicate yourself to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Like they wanted to make Dunk's backstory as tragic as possible. I'm trying to figure out if there's any significance to the fact that like Rafe was theoretically a boy in the books, is now a girl played by actress Chloe Leah in the show. But I think it's just a matter of they wanted to take a character that was already mentioned in the book.
Yeah.
And convert it into like a more poignant love story, as it were.
Yeah.
You know? But yes, as I'm watching this, Kim Renfro, I'm seeing like, Dunk says that he loves Rafe, and these actors have great chemistry with each other, and so it's like, we're watching this blossoming love story, and at the back of my head, you know, at the bottom of my heart, I'm like, nothing good can come of this, because we've never heard any mentions of Rafe in any of the rest of the show.
Right.
You know, maybe Rafe is off at home, you know, somewhere in a castle waiting for Dunk to rescue her, but I don't think so. That's not how the show works. And so I already kind of know there's a sinking feeling that like something horrible is going to happen to Rafe, like right away, you know?
Yeah.
And so what does happen is there is this guy there who is a Gold Cloak, right, Kim?
Yeah, one of the City Watch.
What's the Gold Cloak? To remind us what that is.
Yeah, the City Watch in King's Landing are kind of like the police force of King's Landing, for lack of a better analogy. They are meant to be kind of keeping the city in order, kidnapping, you know, rapers and thieves, and they have been...
Is that what they stop, or is that what they do?
Well,
because based on this episode...
I mean, ACAB means Gold Cloaks.
Yeah, I think we actually covered that.
We did, right. It's a running theme that the City Watch is a easily corruptible force of men who can kind of either just be, miscreants themselves, as we see, like, this guy, I believe, is like an amputee, and the implication being that he like was once a soldier and can no longer be a soldier in a typical standing army. And so City Watch is like the next best thing available to what are effectively veterans, like wounded veterans of Westeros. And yeah, the corrupting force that is the Gold Cloaks have, it's a running theme in Martin's work, because yes, in House of the Dragon we see Daemon is the one who kind of like is in charge of the Gold Cloaks, and he's like, we're gonna go really get this city in order, and they just have like a brutal sweep of like attacking the people, like the small folk, and kind of like brutalizing everyone into submission. So it was not surprising to see them turn up and be like the antagonists here. But again, that I think that that detail is put there to contrast Sir Arland's behavior, because it's like, okay, even Sir Arland, even drunk out of his mind, is like a more good-hearted, noble person than these people who are allegedly here for the sole purpose of protecting the small folk of King's Landing. So yeah. Oh, and that was the other thing I was going to say, is that they took this detail when Dunk is thinking back to Rafe and his friends, Ferret, Rafe, and Pudding in the Mystery Night story. He's thinking back specifically to this memory of when they came across a severed head, because like people being beheaded and having their head put on spikes is again something we've seen happen often in the King's Landing. It's just a form of punishment for, traitors. And that they like were like messing around with the head and like making girls kiss it and like just disgusting flea bottom orphan things. And that what they did with the head in the end was they threw it into the pot of brown, which is like, a bowl of brown is like the best kind of food that you can get if you can't afford anything else in King's Landing. And it's a stew that is often made with perhaps humans and like cats and pigeons and rats and stuff. And so the fact that in the show they had this detail of Sir Arland cutting the head off of the one gold cloak was again like, I'm like, okay, we're nodding to what Dunk remembers in the books, but it's being changed and embellished and like way dramatized for TV, which made sense to me. And I was also like, hell yeah, behead that guy, stab that other guy. You kind of get the sense that like those two, City Watch and Rafe, are going to be found, and it's just going to be like, oh, another day in Flea Bottom, like,
right.
3 more people dead. And so,
well, also why that guy felt so open to just murdering Rafe right away,
right, like,
because there's no consequences.
There's no consequence. The value of human life is very low in this part of Westeros, and that is the exact. That is the circumstance which Dunk credits Arlen for saving him from, for giving him an out from.
Yeah, before we get to that, there are like a couple of references to events going on in the broader world, right? There's some kind of rebellion going on, right? And
yes.
So Kim, can you fill us in a little bit about the context of, they're on this battlefield when we meet young Dunk.
Yeah.
And then there's like unrest going on, like people are like, we got to get out of King's Landing. So can you tell us a little bit about how the events of this flashback fit in with broader Game of Thrones universe?
Yeah, and this is where I'm like, this is so dense. I could probably really dive into this and talk about it for an hour, but for the sake of brevity, yes, what they have done here is tied the Blackfire Rebellion, which was Blackfire is the name that a bastard Targaryen took for himself, Daemon Blackfire. So effectively, in this period, there was an uprising from people who were
of a Targaryen
bastard effectively trying to take over the legitimate Targaryen line of succession, which failed. So the Blackfire Rebellion only ended with this final battle, the Battle of Redgrass Field, as it was called. And in the book, they say that this was just like a random field. It's not specified where it is. And then it was named Redgrass because so much blood ran on the field afterwards that it was red. The Battle of Redgrass Field, Sir Arland was fighting in that battle on behalf of the Blackfires. And in that battle is when his original squire, a boy named Roger, died. So part of the backstory here, and I think what they're doing is having that scene of Dunk, trying to get the scrap metal, and you see King's Landing in the distance. I think they're trying to imply that that's the aftermath of Redgrass Field.
Yes.
And so Sir Arland finding him is like an even stronger, there's a stronger link there between like Sir Arland just lost his squire in that battle and therefore needs a new one. And that's why Dunk coming into his life in that moment seems so, serendipitous, and probably why Sir Arland lets him follow him around and tag along. Because Sir Arland is also suffering a recent loss of his own squire. And so, yes, that the Blackfire Rebellion, it was also alluded to in Dunk's little sing-song, his little made-up song from a few episodes back, the one that was like, had a bunch of innuendos. That song was about...
Egg was singing
that song, yes.
Yeah.
And he's hinting at it too. Like the story that he's telling there is like, 13, 14 years ago, there was this rebellion that happened. So it's also present in Egg's mind in the contemporary timeline of the story, which makes them, again, like they're building up a lot of good sort of like rich backstory here for where the Targaryens are at in their current kind of standing with the populace, in the tenuousness of their power, and the way that the small folk are reacting to them. Because it seems like the small folk have pretty consistently been on, we're sick of this Targaryen shit.
Right. For like over a decade. Now,
yeah.
At least. And you can draw a straight line from where the Targaryens are at this point in time to where they are at the beginning of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I want to mention Rafe's murder. Super tragic. The show spends a lot of time on it, right? And we experience the horror of it through Bamber Todd's bright blue eyes, and it's really, really sad. And I do think for a character that was just introduced, the show does a good job of spending an appropriate amount of time mourning this character who, like, we just met. It's just like, wow. Really, really sad, because what happens is she ends up kind of messing around with this gold cloak guy, stealing some of his stuff. He steals all of their money, and then she tries to get it back, and then he kills her in retaliation. At that point, before they can finish off Dunk, Arland comes charging in and kills the two gold cloaks that are messing around with him, which is actually an amazing kind of hand-to-hand fight scene, very messy, very brutal. And so yet another shock. And then of course it all locks into, like, for me as a viewer, I'm like, it's all locking into place. Like, this is how they met.
Yeah.
And since I guess you also had that moment too, because you didn't know that, right?
No, I didn't. I guess like the pigs, when they started doing like these close-up shots of pigs, and there's also a shot when you see Dunk jump on the guy and he's like trying to like bite his ear off or bite his neck. You see a shot from what's inside. I think that's the pot shop, because he has said that Sir Arland found him like behind a pot shop chasing pigs. And so I also went kind of like, that's Sir Arland's vantage point of something not good is going on outside that window. I better go interfere. And yeah, when he comes barreling in with that line, "In the name of the mother." In the name of the mother! Leave that boy be! Which is that's the title of this episode. And I was like, oh man, here we go again with like, they're really tying it all in with not only like that this is the situation under which Dunk and Arland met, but like this invocation of the faith of the Seven, and this idea that Sir Arland is that his charge to protect the innocent comes from the mother in this religion, that like that is what the mother does, and therefore the mother is working through nights when it comes to protecting children or protecting the weak or the indefendable.
Hence, and tying into your earlier comments about this topic as well. So, okay. So then, young Dunk takes an appropriate amount of time to mourn the passing of Rafe, and then
the shot of him crying alone, and it immediately reminded me of Egg sitting up against the wall in the earlier episode when he was apologizing. Yeah, when he was apologizing, I was just like, oh, these boys, they're just boys. so someone protect them.
Yeah. Well, hopefully someone will in this case. So what happens is this kind of amazing montage where we see Dunk following Arlen around. And then Arlen is speaking and chanting and singing in some kind of language. Kim, I asked you if you could figure out what this was. Did you have what was your best guess as to what's going on here?
My best guess is that it's either it's like an old Valyrian or Dothraki song. And I think the only reason why I'm guessing those two is because it clearly feels to me like something that David J. Peterson, who's the language inventor,
language expert.
He's because in the books, in all of George R. R. Martin's books, he alludes to different languages being spoken, but he didn't actually write them out in full. But that is what David J. Peterson, a language expert, creator, has done, and so it very clearly sounds to me like one of those two things. But I was also like, they didn't give us the subtitles as far as I can tell. And so it felt to me like more of the sort of more rich world building with Sir Arland of like, oh, this is a well-traveled man, even though he doesn't seem as much. But it's like not everyone just goes around singing songs in non-Westerosi English language. But I'm hoping that maybe we're recording this early. I bet that there will be some post-episode, interview reveals of something deeper going in on that song. Because I'm sure, again, this episode is so rich with detail. It would shock me if there's not something more symbolic going on there.
What is your interpretation of what's going on here with Dunk following Arlen around? Like, do you think Arlen is conscious of Dunk following him?
I think he becomes conscious of it.
Well, sir, obviously, yes, I agree. But I'm saying for the majority of it, right, is Dunk like hidden, right? Is he kind of my interpretation is Arlen is not really registering that because Dunk is doing so very surreptitiously. He's not announcing his presence.
He is.
Maybe in the background, Arlen has some sense of it, but he's chosen to ignore him for most of this time period. At the very least, and at worst, he doesn't notice him at all.
Yeah,
is what's going on. But yeah, I'm curious, like what your interpretation of what's going on there is.
I felt like Arlen knew he was there pretty early on, but was making a choice to leave him be. And it felt to me like it was almost reminding me of like someone trying to domesticate a wild animal a little bit like, I'm just going to live my life and show you how I do things. And if you want to be part of this, great. If not, I won't see you tomorrow morning, which is
this just gives you a sense of what you'd be signing up for,
right? And clearly Dunk likes what he sees, which I think
I don't know that I think that's true, but I think he feels like such a enormous debt to Sir Arlen, right? Like, and also is inspired by Sir Arlen.
He feels this draw.
What he did, right? And so it's like, okay, it doesn't matter whether this life is actually extremely difficult. Like I am your man, which is something that he says to Baelor later on in the episode. It's basically like I am your dude.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of what was my interpretation of certainly Dunk's actions.
Yeah.
Dunk's actions I think are pretty clear what's going on there. But it's like, what is Sir Arlen doing, I think is an open question.
It felt to me like he was like leaving the room for Dunk to decide to tag along with him, while also not like, he clearly wasn't going too far out of his way, going out of his way at all to, make him comfortable or make him feel welcome. So it's an interesting tension, but I think ultimately Sir Arland, I don't know, maybe Sir Arland wasn't totally confident that he was ready for another squire, or that he wanted to bring another boy into this life. Again, if his previous squire Roger had just died. I don't know. I think it adds to the sort of grayness of Sir Arland.
Yeah.
That he's not entirely like welcoming and proactive about being like, hey, you clearly need help, let me help you. And yet he's in his own way offering Dunk a sense of like security and consistency that he probably hasn't seen from many grown-ups in his life until now.
I do think it's possible to read it as Sir Arland just didn't see him, though. It's I think it's unlikely, but it's possible. Like both interpretations are possible in my opinion.
Like didn't see him. The when I felt like it was tipped was when Dunk drank the creek water, and then got really sick. And I feel like that was a time that I feel like I saw Sir Arland kind of like look around in a way of being like, someone's having a bad time over there, which is funny because this whole flashback doesn't happen in the books, but George has done this before with different characters, most notably Daenerys in the last book that was published. I don't think that they added this full detail into the show, but there's like a whole extended chapter about her, like when she's on her own, and Drogon has flown off and she's like basically trying to get back to civilization, that she drinks water and is like puking and shitting her pants for days. And it's funny because I remember when that season of Game of Thrones was coming out and book readers being like, oh, I see they skipped the like long extended
where's
sequence.
The Daenerys diary?
But no, they gave it all to Dunk.
Indeed. So then finally at some point Sir Arland confronts Dunk while Dunk seems to be at one of his lowest points and says, get up. And that's the words that modern present day Dunk remembers to motivate him to stand up and get back onto the battlefield. Quite an effective sequence. And I love that him saying get up, right? Like it's the first words really that Sir Arland has ever spoken to Dunk.
Get up.
And Sir Arland, from everything we see of this guy, is not like the most nurturing presence.
Yeah.
But showing Dunk this acknowledgement and basically this motivation of get up, it's enough to get him up in the modern day. Anyway, let's go back to what's going on the field of battle in the modern day. So, back in the combat field, Dunk is getting his ass kicked again. He is still getting rocked.
Yeah.
Dunk wakes up to see Arianne swinging the Morning Star for him, gets up but is charged by Maekor on horseback and knocked down again. But it essentially concludes with a massive hand-to-hand fight scene between Dunk and Arianne. Just one of the most vicious, brutal fight sequences. Clearly a battle, a duel of attrition where both of them are getting permanent damage inflicted on them multiple times. It is just really, really brutal. And again, everything seems to be lost. Like at one point, Dunk collapses to the ground. He stops blinking. And it's like, is this it? Is this it? And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, it can't be it because there's 2 more books, And then, of course, they cut back to the flashback of get up again, and then Dunk gets up and then finally gets the upper hand on Arianne and forces him to tell everyone that he yields, which is just, the whole thing is just riveting and horrifying and brutal and just really, really, really well done. Kim, any reactions to this sequence, and did it play out as you'd imagined from the books? What was your thoughts?
They made it so much worse to watch than it was to read. Like truly the sound design of like Dunk being disoriented, and as you referred to before, like him not being able to see or hear properly, and then there are multiple big stabbings that don't happen in the books, like when Arianne just kind of like pokes him in the back a few times with his sword. and like the knife through the hand.
He catches his knife through the hand, like he catches the knife with his hand.
That's not in the book, and I was just like, oh, like, yeah. They really drove the point home of how overwhelming and violent this event is, and like just such clever ways of showing us glimpses of the rest of the action only as Dunk is able to perceive it, basically. Because again, that's
right.
These books are all from Dunk's point of view. So he genuinely doesn't know. He can't sense what is going on the rest of the field unless that pairing comes close to him or XYZ thing. So I found myself when I was rewatching the episode, I was literally like slowing it down, pausing and being like, okay, that's, zooming in and being like, that's that Kingsguard and he's fighting this guy.
Well, you do point out one of the most interesting things about the episode, which is it's rare to experience one of these sequences through only one soldier's eyes. Right. Usually if we're in a battle sequence, we're cutting back and forth. There's a B plot. We're back at the castle, like something. But it's like, in general, I think for 98% of the show, we are experiencing events only through Dunk's perspective. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of exceptions to that, as we have discussed, perhaps potentially on this podcast. But in general, it's only through Dunk's perspective, which I just think is like really unique. It's claustrophobic in a good way.
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow, like my mind wants you to cut away to something else. Like I want to see what else is going on. The show does not offer you that relief.
No.
So anyway.
And I think it notably only does the most insight we get to anything else going on the field happens between Baelor and Maekar and Lionel Baratheon. Like this is in the books, and I think that they did a decent job of making it clear if you can maybe catch what else is going on. But this idea that as Dunk is getting the upper hand on Aerion and gets more and more brutal blows into Aerion, and Aerion cries out, that Maekar is effectively in a panic trying to get to his son and says like, my boy. And the only reason he's not able to come get closer and try to fight Dunk as well is because Baelor and Lionel Baratheon have him like 2-1, basically. And that's right. The only other closest fight that we get. And it adds to that tension where, when Dunk's off the field and he says like, did anyone die? You, the audience, are like, yeah, man, like what the hell? Where is everyone else?
My thing was when he's brutally bashing in Aerion's face, and then Aerion says, I yield, and then Dunk like pulls him up and he's like, tell him, like, you need to tell him.
Yes.
And then like every moment that Aerion is hesitating, I'm like, guy, people are dying, like just say it,
Yes.
You really get a sense of things are happening at a very rapid rate.
Yeah. I love that you just said that, because that's literally part of Dunk's internal thinking in the book is the same thing plays out. And this is also a fun detail from the book, is that when Dunk is finally able to get the upper hand on Aerion and effectively uses his physical strength, he says in his head, like, Sir Duncan the Tall might not be able to win this fight, but Dunk from Flea Bottom can. And so that also was resonating with me as I saw this flashback, as I was like, oh, they're also laying in all of this groundwork as to like why Dunk has a scrappier, unexpected method of winning here than a prince possibly could. Because even if he doesn't know how to joust in the best way, he doesn't have that experience. He does have experience with just straight up hand-to-hand dirty fighting in the mud. So I loved that. And yes, that Dunk, when Aerion finally says, I yield, in the book, Dunk like takes a beat and looks around and thinks to himself like, someone's gonna die if this doesn't stop soon, and drags him up to Lord Ashford to be like, tell him that it's over. And then that's when
I was terrified that Aerion was going to pull some underhanded shit and like yield, but then like Dunk stands up and then Aerion like stabs him in the back or something. That didn't happen. But yes, anyway, he's able to. Dunk is smart, and he's like, "Hey, I need everyone to hear that this guy yields," and that's what he makes happen. So Dunk is helped off the field by Raymond and Steely Pate, and while they attend to his wounds, Dunk asks if anyone has died. They tell him the 2 Humphreys are gone, with one of the 3 Kingsguard seriously wounded as well. Kim, do you want to break down exactly what happened, at least according to the books, which may not precisely match what happened in the show, but like, here's what we know from the books of how the fight ended up.
That Humphrey Harding, who was he's the knight who Arian singled out earlier in the tourney and killed his horse intentionally and had his leg broken.
Right.
We're told that he died effectively on first charge at the beginning of this.
Humphrey has had a rough last few days, I think is kind of what. And
the fact I'm almost positive that he's the one who went like green fucking boys to like what a way to go out.
Those were his last words.
He really proved them wrong. He said, "I'm not green. I'm at death's door." Yes, and then that the other Humphrey was killed by one of the Kingsguard who was fighting on behalf of Arian, and then the third Kingsguard, I believe. I don't know if the book specifies exactly what happened to him, because again, the book is in this same narrow perspective from Dunk of like, we don't know, but same dialogue happens where they say that the third Kingsguard was like carried unmoving from the field. And that one, the one who is presumably down for the count, is not one of the 2 that we met in the show earlier. So it's like his name was Sir Willem. So the 2 Kingsguard who Dunk had that great scene with earlier in the season, they're okay.
Yeah. The crabber one.
Crabber
is okay, yeah. Right?
Donald of Duskendale.
Yeah.
I believe Donald was the one who killed Sir Humphrey Harding. I think that's how they say it played out in the book.
So Baelor arrives at the scene, and he and Dunk share this wonderful moment where Dunk basically swears allegiance to him, and it's very moving. And Baelor is just very chill about the whole thing. He's like, hey, yeah, let's worry about like figuring this out, and then we'll see who's swearing allegiance to later, basically. And he asks for help taking off his helmet, but when Steely Pate does, the extent of Baelor's catastrophic head injury is revealed, and he falls to the ground with Dunk catching him, sobbing, "I'm sorry," repeatedly. Huge shock.
Yeah.
Huge shock that Baelor seems to have received a mortal wound in the back of the head from, I think it was Fossaway, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Wait, why do you think that?
Because I think it wouldn't have been the Kingsguard, and it wouldn't have been Maekar that killed him. I think he says it was Fossaway.
He says my brother's mace.
Oh, my brother's mace. Okay, sorry, I didn't.
He says brother's mace. He's strong, implying that he thinks Maekar hit him in the head.
Okay, you know what it was? I thought he said your brother's mace. And he was talking to Raymond Fossaway, but that's not even his brother; that's his cousin.
Yes.
So I got that wrong.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Anyway, no, so that's a key detail. I was about to be like, wait, what did I miss?
No. I'm glad you you are here to help correct my misunderstanding. So Maekar then seems to have murdered Baelor on the battlefield. I mean, I have all these questions that we have not discussed about what are the implications of Baelor possibly dying in this tiny trial by combat in this somewhat remote area.
Yeah.
Feels like it could have huge reverberations amongst the kingdom. He's also Hand of the King, if I'm not mistaken,
yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know if talking about what the implications are would be spoilers. It probably is, right? So like, probably we should wait until next week at least.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I will say it's funny because I took note of this. There are exactly 6 pages left in this story. From where they left this episode. And yeah, it feels like it's worth waiting to see how they adapt or expand those before I get into too many hypotheticals. But
I'm just saying, I don't think it's a great system of governance if your heir to the throne can just sign up for one of these things and get killed. Feels like huge key man risk is what I'm saying,
Yeah, and I think that's part of the tragedy that George R. Martin baked into this story is that there were very low odds of anything historical happening at this little tourney in the meadow.
Right.
And through a series of bad choices made by a few different people, all of a sudden Baelor finds himself feeling compelled to help Dunk do the right thing and stand up for himself and stand up for knighthood and chivalry. And everything goes wrong.
Price.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, my assumption is that he's dead because this is like a showing Gus Fring's face, moment. Like, I think you're not supposed to believe that he's able to survive that head wound. But who knows? Who knows what is going to happen in the next episode? We don't. Kim probably does, but we don't. All right. Anyway, multiple gut punches from Rafe dying to Dunk winning the battle against Arion to then Baelor dying. It's just like, wow, like what an episode. So many memorable moments. And the episode's only like 40, 35 minutes or something like that. It's like pretty short.
Yeah.
So just like they packed in a lot, but it was an incredible episode. Kim, closing thoughts on the episode before we get to feedback and Reddit AMA stuff.
Mostly that I really continue to love what the story is showing us in terms of what it means to live a life of integrity and how doing so isn't rewarded by a lot of people or by a lot of structures going on in a society. And I find so much meaning in that. And I really love that they've pulled that thread out of George's story and been able to expand upon it with these themes of parenthood, I believe. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that the father and the mother are invoked first, usually, out of all of the other gods, along with the warrior, obviously. And I just think it's a beautiful piece of storytelling that we get to reflect upon what it means to try and be good-hearted, what it means to feel guilt about mistakes you've made or people that you couldn't help sooner. And I just once again, big hats off to this entire adaptation team, because it's also not something that I think one single person achieves. As much as Ira Parker certainly gets credit for being showrunner here, but the beauty of what made Game of Thrones really special, what I think House of the Dragon was doing very well, and what this show is also doing well, is bringing in so many elements of fictional storytelling from a book, like straight onto a page, but also like the casting, as we've been shouting out, like this cast that they've brought together is really phenomenal, brings so much heart to all of these little moments, all of the costuming details, the score, Dan Romer just like continues to nail it out of the park. It's just all working so well together. And yeah, I wasn't sure how this adaptation would play out. And I feel like I couldn't be happier as a little book nerd who also likes epic TV storytelling.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, exceptional episode. Just one of my favorite episodes of television I've watched over the course of the last few years. Not even just Game of Thrones related, and certainly one of my favorite Game of Thrones related episodes ever made. So
that's so cool.
Wonderful stuff.
How crazy is it to achieve that in 5 episodes of a new story?
Short episodes too. Yeah. So anyway, Anyway, we'd love to hear what you think. Your reactions, let us know at acastofkings@gmail.com. All right, Kim, couple final things before we wrap up for today. We want to get to your emails to acastofkings@gmail.com. Tammy writes into acastofkings@gmail.com. What did you make of Sir Arland's shrug in last week's episode? I don't remember David and Jesse discussing it. I thought it could be interpreted in one of two ways. Number one, Sir Arland did make Dunk a knight, but he didn't know the exact words to use, so he just shrugged and said, okay, you're a knight. So Dunk could have been knighted, but not know how to do it properly. Or number two, Dunk was calling on Sir Arland's spirit for advice/counsel in that moment, and the shrug was basically, I've got nothing. There are other possibilities, so I'm curious what you thought of its significance. I did read the novella, but I don't remember that image coming to his mind at this time, end quote. So Tammy is referring to the fact that when Dunk is at his lowest moment, right, he seems to call, he has this vision of Sir Arland, and you see a kind of close-up of Sir Arland's face, and he kind of gives a shrug like, I don't know what to tell you, kid. You know, like that kind of shrug.
Them's the breaks or whatever.
Yeah. What was your interpretation of it? Like, did you interpret that as an actual flashback? I interpreted it as a thing that Dunk was imagining at that. Like him, it was number 2 in Tammy's email of like, he's wondering what Sir Arland would do in this scenario. And Sir Arland's like, don't know what to tell you, kid. You know, like that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Did you think it was an actual flashback, Kim? What was your reaction to that?
I did not think it was an actual flashback, but it felt like a way for them to bring this internal doubt that Dunk has about himself in the books to screen, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, I don't think it was meant to be a flashback in the way that all of the other flashbacks have been. Like the way that it was shot was different, and it was very much mirroring like Raymond on his knee and Lionel. So yeah, I'm more inclined to go with number 2 option, that like the spirit of Sir Arland was fully unable to provide Dunk with any useful memory or turn of phrase in this moment. And I think from a book reader's perspective, and this question of was Dunk ever really knighted? I think it was a visual cue for the TV audience to get you to wonder to yourself a bit too, of like, Dunk doesn't have a memory of Sir Arland doing this for him. He only has a memory of Sir Arland shrugging or dismissing him in this circumstance.
Well, I will discuss that. I do want to discuss that more later. This seems to be an ongoing topic for us. But Ira Parker recently did an AMA for this season of The Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Interesting timing to do it at this point, you know, like I guess I'm curious why he didn't do it at the end or at the beginning, but I guess midway is also pretty good. And there was some interesting Q&A here. I'll just read a couple of questions and answers. Public Student 162 writes, I noticed that Maekar and Arian's personal coat of arms don't appear in the show. Was this a conscious creative choice, or was it avoided for practical reasons like visual clarity or production constraints? As a personal fan of heraldry, I would have loved to see them. And Ira Parker responds, so far I've seen fans point out 2 mistakes in this show that I was unaware of. This is one of them. Definitely should have had Maekar's. That would have made it so easy to distinguish him in the fog. Whoops. End quote. And I just got to say, you got to love a showrunner that's just willing to admit that they messed it up.
Yeah.
You know, and I do appreciate the brutal honesty of that. It's like, should have included this really nice detail from the books, but didn't. Sorry about that. Whoops.
Yeah, I did notice when I was trying to kind of like slow down the episode and figure out who was fighting whom, I was like, it would have been easier if Maekar in the books he uses the Targaryen sigil, but like copied and pasted into 4, you know, so it's like a little like quadrant of 4 dragons, I think, both to represent his 4 sons perhaps, or the fact that he's one of 4. And him, all of the Targaryen armor looks very similar, but yes, like the way that you would have been able to more easily distinguish them is if Maekar's 4 dragon sigil had been in the show. And then yes, Arian has a dragon that has more color on like around its heads, like orange and all this other stuff. Also notable, it didn't really wind up being super impactful, although maybe it has to do with the head injury thing. Baelor is not wearing his own armor. Baelor is wearing his son's armor because Baelor did not come to this tournament with the intention of fighting. So he's in slightly ill-fitting armor for himself, including maybe the helmet. And so like that's like another little thread of like what went wrong here. But yes, he's wearing the same armor that we saw his son Valar wear in the first episode, or in the first tourney event. So
Valuable Tutor 5479 asked Ira Parker, showrunner of Night of the Seven Kingdoms, how many seasons do you have a general story for past seasons 1 through 3, if any? To which Ira Parker responds, George gave me 10 to 12 stories in addition to the first 3. End
that's
quote.
wild.
So there could be up to 15 seasons of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, Kim Renfro.
Yeah.
And surely, by the way, that's all going to go according to plan.
All going to go according to plan. I'm also like, man.
There's never been any issues with George giving people additional story past the books. So.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, right. We know the folly of he gave me a couple plot points and now we're working towards them. But
and then the endless recriminations in the blog post from George about how well they were honored.
I don't know if this is an okay time for this tangent, but I'll take it anyways. But like, I'm saying you, Dave, but anyone who's just watching these shows and not reading the books, what I believe you are now starting to pick up on and experience is the reality that George basically has like this entire world and its history in his mind, all the way from thousands of years ago. Like we're talking the Doom of Valyria, all the stuff that we talked about pre-Westeros, all the way up through, let's say, Jon Snow getting stabbed by his Night's Watch and like falling down. So really, like Game of Thrones, that story, A Song of Ice and Fire, is the only one that seems to be genuinely unfinished in George's mind, of like he does not know where all of those characters are going to end up yet, or maybe he knows where some of them are, but he's still in the process of like deciding. Whereas everything backwards from that, so everything that we're seeing in House of the Dragon, all these characters that we're seeing in Dunk and Egg, for the most part, George has already plotted how their life ends or how they get from point A to point B, even if it's just a handful of lines summarizing it. Because as you know, people who have listened to this podcast know that we've talked so much about how House of the Dragon is based on Fire and Blood, which is not a novel or a set of novellas. It's like a fake history. Same with A World of Ice and Fire. So the fact that George has like 10 to 12 already outlined stories of what Dunk and Egg have been up to isn't necessarily surprising to me, but it's just like, it's like a new quirk on the issue with trying to adapt this world from George, which is that he is the keeper and master and inventor of all of these people and lives. And it's just a matter of what he's able to put out onto a page for us to enjoy.
Right. I'm very curious in what form these 10 to 12 stories were provided to Ira Parker. Like, did he just kind of write him a memo? Did he verbally say randomly one night at a bar, here are the 10 to 12 stories?
Right.
In one, Dunk goes on an adventure and slays a dragon. And this other one, like, and that's a story, like, I'm very curious what format they're providing.
And like, I'm sure that the book reader audience is also very curious. It's like, when did George write those? Have they been floating around in his notes for decades? Are they all things that have come into his mind since 2015, which was when A Night of the Seven Kingdoms was published? Only George R. R. Martin knows.
I do like that somebody responded to that and said, "Hey, Ira, this is me, George. This is my secondary account. Can you DM me the stories I gave you? I lost my USB and need to do some changes. Thanks." And then somebody responds, "Ask him to send through those Winds of Winter drafts you misplaced too. That would be great."
I can feel the envy of Redditors like pouring off the comments of being like, "Wow, what so many people wouldn't give for a night at the pub with George to hear what's tinkering around in his brain.
Theostru writes, many readers consider Dunk's exchange with Steely Pate, this is referring to an exchange that happens before Dunk takes the field. Okay.
Yeah.
And apparently there was an exchange in the books where Dunk asks, "Who am I to them?" And Steely Pate says, "A knight who remembered his vows." Right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a quote from the books.
It's a beautiful scene of like Dunk is very nervous. He's going from, his private area towards the field, and basically he realizes that all of the small folk gathered are like praising him, like reaching out to him, saying like "Mother bless you." A woman like kisses him on the cheek. Like it's like he gets this very like "we're all with you" sort of send off from the crowd before he even enters the arena, and that is what they took.
Does not happen
in the show. Yeah.
But anyway, many readers consider that exchange to be the soul and moral of the entire novella. The impact comes not just from the exchange itself, but its careful placement at Dunk's lowest point before he realizes any champions could have answered his call, let alone Breakspear joining him. Could you speak to your reasoning in removing or potentially moving to a later episode this exchange? Removing it entirely diminishes the soul of the story, and moving it to a later moment weakens its impact, as Dunk already has the favor of the Prince of Dragonstone. It's an odd choice given how faithful you've been otherwise to the novella. End quote. To which Ira Parker responds, "Honestly, it was a mistake on my part. Not my first, not my last on the show. That scene was in the script at one point, then fell out. I agree that a knight who remembers his vows is the soul of the story, but I think that is still very much at the core of the show. Even if I stupidly left out this scene, it may not be said explicitly, but Dunk's actions remain the same." End quote. Now, this made me think of some things, Kim, which is, I agree that's a beautiful line of dialogue. Would have been great to include it. But I don't think, I'm just going to say this, I don't think it's a mistake to remove it, because I think that the show already makes that point, or rather, like, the show is about what an actual true knight is. And obviously we've been discussing on this podcast whether or not Dunk was actually knighted.
Right.
Now, I actually went back and watched the first couple episodes again since last week. And in my opinion, the first couple, like, if you rewatch the first couple episodes with the question in your mind of was Dunk actually knighted, it really seems like the way that those episodes are shot heavily implies that he was not knighted, in my opinion. Heavily implies. And what I mean by that is, for instance, in the way that he's trying to figure out what to do after Sir Arland has died. Now, I know you've said you could attribute this to just kind of his being a young kid and not really know what he's doing, right? That's all plausible. But I do think the show heavily implies that he's not knighted. However, looking past all that, I think trying to figure it out is kind of missing the point. And what I mean by that is the information of whether he was knighted was purposefully withheld from you, right? Like, they did not include a flashback in the book. They did not include a flashback in the show. They purposely didn't show it. I think your time is better off spent asking, why didn't they show it? What is the purpose of withholding that information? I'll give you an analogy. Spoilers for the Christopher Nolan film Inception. I probably already talked about this on this podcast, right? So at the very end of the movie Inception, Cobb spins his totem.
Yeah.
His totem that's supposed to tell him whether he's still in a dream or not.
Yeah.
And then he kind of walks away, and then the camera closes in on the top, this little spinny thing. And then right as you see, like, is it about to fall or is it going to go on forever? Like, right as you're about to get a glimpse of it, it cuts to black, and then we get the credits of the movie. And a lot of people have spent a lot of time debating, oh, was the top going to fall? Oh, I think I saw it fall. I think I saw it, like, fall a little bit for like a split second.
It wobbled.
It wobbled for a split second. It wobbled. So therefore he's not a dream anymore. Like, and Christopher Nolan has gone on record and said, guys, the point of that scene is not whether the top is going to fall or not. The point of the scene is Cobb has already walked away from the top. He's not even looking.
Right.
He, as a character, has already grown beyond that need to cling to his totem. He's already advanced so far as a character,
right,
that he's like, I have let go of this thing in my past. I'm not even looking at the top.
Right.
That is what's most important about the final scene of Inception, according to Christopher Nolan himself.
Mhm.
This is not me speaking.
Mhm.
You may agree or disagree with that. That's fine. Like, death of the author, fine.
Mhm.
But I think that the important question to ask is not, was Dunk knighted? It's, why would they withhold that information, right? It's because George R. R. Martin, wants you to consider whether or not it's important that he was knighted at all, and what a true knight actually is, and all the things that we've talked about on the show.
Yeah.
So anyway, that is my, like, we'll probably talk about this again next week, but that is my encouragement to people, is to consider, like, rather than trying to prove whether he was a knight or not, and there's plenty of evidence in the book that he was not knighted, and in the show that he was not knighted, consider why that information was withheld.
Right.
Okay, that's my soapbox speech. Kim Renfro, any other thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree that it's heavily implied that he was not, and yet if George wanted us to know for certain one way or another, he would have told us. And I will say I'm gonna hold out. The show has room here to give us more information if they so choose in the future. Right. And I'm not, like, I wouldn't be completely flabbergasted if some flashback does show up at some pivotal point that lets us know exactly what happens, and it's worse than any of us could have ever imagined, type of thing, or something, you know, or it's like even more sad.
More evidence, by the way, you know, I know I just said we shouldn't talk about this, but like, when you see Dunk coming up with his idea of what to do next, right, he's like, maybe I could join the Kings, do this, do that, but there is this tournament. Like, it does feel like it's shot in such a way as though he's like coming up with the lie in that moment, like coming up with the plan of, hey, I can tell them I was a knight, you know, like, and that's going to be how I get into the tournament, you know, like, that's what I'm talking about. Again, I know I just said, well, we shouldn't be engaging in this, but that is. I just wanted to clarify what I was referring to.
Yeah, and what Ira Parker and his team, the tricky charge that they have is the fact that most of the heavily implied evidence that he wasn't actually knighted in the books comes entirely from Dunk's internal monologue. So they had to put that out in dialogue or in action. They had to externalize it exactly. So it makes sense to me that people are picking up on that. And I already talked about, like, the whole Robin thing. Like, again, Dunk crapping his pants and nerves isn't in the book. But him telling the master of the games that the only witness to his knighting was a robin in the tree is in the books, like, early on. And the fact that the show distinctly had the robin in the tree for that scene, and like a really, like, clear stylized cutaway to it, you know, too, was like more externalizing of this internal idea. I might take it upon myself to do, like, a full written deep dive into all of the various hints and clues, because I was maybe being more cagey about it on the podcast in earlier episodes, because a lot of these heavily implied hints come later in the book. I think, like, he gets as his situation becomes more dire, Dunk's internal monologue starts glancing upon this, like, oh God, what have I done here kind of sense of, like,
really, it gets more dire than this episode where the heir to the throne is killed.
No, I'm saying the build up to here, you know.
I see. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And just another little piece of, to me, what feels like an externalization of that is that in the end, in the final moments of this episode here, when Balar has fallen, in the book, it does say, you know, Dunk caught him, and here, I can just read from it. It says, "Up, they say he said, just as he had with thunder and the melee, up, up, but he never remembered that afterward." So, like, they do have Dunk here in the episode saying, like, get up, and then he moves earnestly into crying and saying, like, I'm sorry. And, like, that to me was like, oh man, Dunk is feeling an enormous weight of guilt around the fact that he feels responsible for everything that's happened here, potentially most likely because he lied to even be in this situation in the first place. And Baelor standing up for him as a true knight is that much more devastating if Dunk has this internal gut, wrenching thing going on of like, I'm not though, I'm not technically a knight, even though, as we keep discussing, all of his actions and his behavior and the way that he's living his life is way more knightly than most of the other people that we're seeing here.
I do want to give you the last word on this, Kim, about this "Who am I to them? A knight who remembered his vows." Did you miss that line in the show? Like, was that a line that you missed?
I don't even know that I was missing. I don't think I missed that line in particular. I missed the setup of knowing that the crowd was on Dunk's side before the trial started. Because the commenter in this AMA didn't really get at this, but I saw other people talking about this on Reddit too, that the irritation with not including that scene was tied to the fact that they did add this scene of one of the lords standing up and farting. Like, that's not in the book. And the way that like the crowd kind of seems to like laugh along with the lords. The
crowd does not seem pro Dunk in this show. Right.
And so that, I mean, they do towards the end. I think that's what's interesting, is that instead of them showing the crowd on his side from the beginning and like another ally, they draw out the crowd coming to be on Team Dunk, basically, in a way that like, I don't particularly love, but it's not like the biggest oversight to me. I think that everything that they did do with Steely Pate and Raymond being this sort of like deep friend connection, allyship to Dunk, still does a lot of that heavy lifting for us.
I think that if I think about the net effect of that is, right, it's that Dunk feels much more lonely and isolated in the lead up to the fight.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can imagine they could have done it that way. Like, they deliberately chose to not do it that way.
Yeah.
And why would they have done that? And when I say they, I mean Ira Parker and the other people working on the show, right, is to make it feel like, because I think if everyone was like cheering on Dunk and we've got your back, like, you would feel like, oh, maybe this is kind of like almost an even match.
Yeah.
Whereas in the show, it feels like hopeless from the jump. Like, it feels like there's no way in hell this guy is going to survive.
Yeah.
So, is that better or worse? I can't say, but I do think it has an effect, right?
Yeah.
And the scenario you described, or the version you described, would have been nicer. But would it have been more dramatically impactful? Who's to say? Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.